Hello everyone! So for the past few years that I've been making these art videos, at the beginning of the new year I normally make these kind of montage-y type videos that showcase the previous year's videos that I put up. But this time we're going to try something a bit different. I was actually going through the camera roll on my phone and I realized there was a whole lot of artwork that I created and just kind of art-related things that happened that never actually made it into a video and I never really even got to talk about. So this time we're going to do the commentary version of the art of the year. So without further ado, this is the art of 2019. So don't mind me looking down, I'm actually looking at my phone, but hopefully that won't happen too much and I will actually remember to look at the camera. So clearly started off the year with some 3D printing. At this point I had only had my 3D printer for about a month, so it was a bit of a newer acquisition of mine and I was, not that I'm not having fun with it now, but I was definitely testing things out a lot more and playing around with it a lot more and just, you know, doing different prints, and it was just kind of blowing my mind still at this point. Started off the year with printing this Aang little statue figurette type thing. And the first artwork that I did of the year was actually this like gothic-y ink sketch that I did. This is the sketch of it. Yes, the drawing was just done completely in Indian ink. Not sure why, I just kind of felt like doing something a little more simple to kind of start the year off. I probably hadn't been drawing very frequently at this point as it was the beginning of the year. Spending time around the holidays, you know, just obviously, I'm sure for most people, throws off your schedule a bit, so wanted to start off with something a little more simplistic, so kept it black and white. Also did this Bering & Wells illustration in my moleskin. This was actually something that I had started drawing like the year before. I was looking at trying to finish up this moleskin and it was one of the drawings in it, or one of the pages that wasn't finished, and so finished that up at the beginning of the year as well. And that was an acrylic ink base with watercolor. More 3D printing fun, I decided to print this extremely complex and time-consuming Hyrule Castle from Breath of the Wild, and then immediately after that I also printed out a Sheikah Shrine. Oh yeah, and then because they were like these very intricate architectural models, my dad is an architect, and so it just kind of came up like, ooh, why don't you print me a building? And for some reason Minas Tirith came up as that building, and so I found this model that's actually a light and printed it for him, and it's at his office. So one of the things that I had always wanted to do for the studio was install or just display my Electro Ripper. This is gonna come up a lot. It was part of my Enfys Nest costume, which did win an award, and I just like preserving the things that I make anyhow, but this was something that I did really want in my studio because I did spend a lot of time on it and it was also this award-winning thing, so having it in my studio did make a lot of sense. And so it is it's very heavy for one, but it's also a very awkward shape, and it is massive, and so for some reason I must have just been looking at possible options for brackets to 3D print, and I came across this customizable fire extinguisher bracket. You could customize the sizes for like the clip to clip around the fire extinguisher and also a base underneath. And so I did that and turned it into an Electro Ripper stand basically for my wall. Yeah, it's still working great today, so obviously that was a perfectly fine idea. Yes, so I know this definitely did not make it into a video because it was completely under wraps, and actually I'm surprised that it was done this early. Like, the camera roll has all the dates and everything. So apparently in January I actually designed my Emphas Ren armor, which, I mean, good for me for getting things done ahead of time. I really did not think it was done this early. But because this was a custom Mandalorian armor set, it was very under wraps. I teased it minimally. I did not outright say what I was creating until basically the day that I posted the finished costume. But I made this custom Mandalorian armor set based on Enfys Nest because, again, I had become unintentionally well known for creating this character's costume, and I already knew there was no way that I was going to be able to take it and wear it at Star Wars Celebration Chicago. And so the compromise at some point came up that why don't I make this custom. This basically started because the plan was I was going to take my Sabine costume because it packs very easily, it's very comfortable to wear, but that somehow got translated into why don't I make this custom Mandalorian that is based on Enfys Nest, because I've unintentionally become known for this character's costume work. And so that is what I did. The initial concept art that I drew for this matches my costume almost perfectly, which is pretty shocking, because normally when you're building things, some things might have to change, but it actually stayed really close to the original concept, which is super cool. And right after that is when I started working on the pour painting tutorial. Now, I don't actually know if I mentioned this in a video, but the whole reason that the pour painting tutorial kind of became a thing was because my family organized this art night for us all, basically, in which the plan was that I was teaching them all how to pour paint because they really liked these pour paintings that I made for the family TV room, and so this became a thing, like, this is super easy art to make, you guys could probably do it, which turned into let's have a paint night, which was actually incredibly successful. But because of that, I decided to, at the same time, to have some examples of the different types of pouring and the different textures, to create this ultimate pour painting tutorial is what I called it. So I did 8 different pour techniques, I guess, and I basically sent it to all of them saying this is what you're getting yourself into. Do some research so you're not completely flabbergasted by when we're actually doing this. That is how the pour painting tutorial became a thing. Also around this time is when I was starting to print, and I might have actually had the helmet completely printed for my custom Mandalorian armor, and I was actually starting to assemble it at this point. And then the second, it took me like a month to do another painting. That is like the story of the last year. But then I did this watercolor illustration. It was just a super fun experiment of doing this not too shaded landscape drawing. It was more just flat tones and just something different for me, more illustrative based as opposed to photorealistic, and just kind of an experiment, I guess you could say, but I do really like how it turned out. More 3D print things. Now, this was because I decided, because I all of a sudden had access to this 3D printer, that I was going to upgrade some parts on my older Season 3 Sabine costume, because I do wear it a lot for troops. And it's, like I said, it's very easy to pack, so it gets worn a lot, especially because Enfys takes a lot out of me to wear, and it's very not easy to transport. So Sabine gets worn a lot, so we planned on upgrading some parts. We upgraded the belts to actually, like, redid the entire belt configuration. I also decided to redo the blasters and the van braces with 3D printed versions. So there was a lot of costume building going on at this time amongst everything else. Next thing I decided to do in 2019 was this lightbox design. Also did this paper artwork. This is when I actually added the foam helmet fan pieces. More pictures of my Sabine blasters that I got done, or was still working on at this point. This looks like when they were primed and probably sanded. They look really nice and smooth here. And then we jump from them being primed to literally being done. Next thing I did was I started sketching out, obviously, the Star Wars Rebels commemorative piece that I did. A fandom friend of mine did this Star Wars Rebels Remembered Day, and so for that I made this special painting for that day, basically, which was, you know, it just inspired me to do a particular piece of artwork, so it was a fantastic exercise, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. It was based on the, if you know it, the World Between Worlds mural, of the Mortis characters, but it was based on the epilogue part of Rebels. So all of the line art was done in gold, which looks super awesome. It's actually hanging in my studio because I liked it so much, which is honestly a rarity, because if you've seen my studio, like, wall space is at an all-time premium in here. There is not that much of it. So anything that actually makes it to the studio is pretty special. And around that time it was like 1 week until Toronto Comic Con, so I was like speeding through doing the Sabine upgrades, and so this is when the van braces were like fully primed and I was doing that god-awful design on the sides of them that I swore I would never do again, and here I am doing it again. It is an incredibly intense design, and it's also different on both van braces. So I'm drawing this entire thing by hand. Actually, did I do it by hand? I think I did draw it by hand, but then I realized I could use transfer paper. The first time, all by hand. Absolute nightmare. This time, slightly better. Still had to redraw on top of the transfer anyway, so not ideal, but possibly moderately less painful than the last time. Still not something I would ever like to have to do again. Because it's not even just the transfer, it's then actually doing the design itself, which this time I did find a metallic gold marker that I could use, so it did simplify it slightly, but like I was not breathing for like an hour doing these designs. Here is, I would assume, a basically finished van brace. It's got all the detail and the paint, for as far as I can tell anyhow. And then you have the two of them here that I had finally put the electronics in, so the display parts all light up and everything, so there's the two of them all finished. It's the design for my mom's business card. Then we have some actual pictures from Toronto Comic Con, which is always a super fun time. Yep, came back home and immediately went back to working on my Emphas Ren costume because at this point Celebration was less than a month away, and so did want to have that done in a timely fashion and not be like scrambling at the last second. Oh yeah, so literally this week was bananas. So it was literally Toronto Comic Con, and then that week the Star Wars Insider magazine came out that I was actually in. And it wasn't like it was unexpected, but I didn't know that it was going to be combined with the issue with the Star Wars Fan Awards, so it was just kind of like a punch. I had no idea what they were putting in. Like, I knew what pictures that I sent them a ton of pictures, so didn't know what pictures they were going to put in it. I did know the questions they asked me and vaguely what the interview might look like, but, you know, overall, did not know what to expect, and then it was also the Star Wars Fan Awards issue, and so there was this whole other amount of press coverage for my Emphas Nest costume in this issue as well. So it was a lot, it was super cool, probably never gonna happen again, so super awesome, like an unexpected experience. And the magazine also happened to have come out on the 13th year anniversary of me being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, so that was just like a bananas week in general. Yep, and then we're straight back to the helmet painting. This is actually the painting process, and when I started to put the engraving lines on it. Pictures of all of the beads that I was printing out. It was like a friggin' Greebly factory in here with all of those beads, mainly because I didn't actually know how many I was using, because it's not like I was, you know, printing so many to match a particular screen accurate design. It was a complete creative design process, and it was an amount that was up for a bit of debate as to how many I was going to need, so I did have to print a whole lot. Here's a picture of designing the armor plate template, and here's actually the pieces out of Warbler. My desk at some point that was just covered in armor, which is a very normal appearance around here. A picture of when I started actually putting on the text on the helmet, or like engraving that in. This was like definitely like it was getting closer to Celebration, so I was basically just completely working on this costume at this point. We have one of the shoulder pads, sculpting the foam teeth that we're drawing at some point. Here is, I'm assuming the finished paint job for the knee pads. The helmet paint job, which looks finished at this point. It doesn't have the visor in it yet though. Here is, I'm assuming, the finished helmet at this point. See, I take all these nice pictures and then I can't show them ever, so this video is great. Here are the two finished shoulder bell armor pieces for the Emphas Ren costume. The van braces that were finished, again, just jumping from non-existence to completely finished. More foam teeth drying. This is when I started painting all of the beads. They all needed weathering on them, so there was like 30 plus of those. Here are more blasters. I did end up having to print 2 of the Sabine blaster things, 1 to upgrade my actual Sabine ones and 1 for this costume, and so there's a finished paint job for those. Here are the tabard pieces that I had painted, done the stripes on, and now was weathering. Again, just jumping around. There's really not that many pictures because I knew I couldn't share them anyway, so I just obviously decided to not even bother taking them. The initial design for the chest and the armor pieces, it did actually change slightly. I decided to add more lines to it. The necklace that looks finished there. Yes, and this is when I started painting the vest. I did this mock-up design because I knew I was also taking what I call low-key Sabine for Star Wars Celebration, because I knew I was having a group photo with the Star Wars Rebels cast, and obviously I figured I could throw in my wig and a vest and it would be all good. So did a rough design mock-up of what I wanted the vest to look like before I actually started painting it. There's the finished chest plates for the Emphas Ren costume. Ah yeah, so this is a good one. I really wish that I got this in a video, but it was just too much chaos and I don't think I was studio vlogging at the time. But my Star Wars Fan Award arrived like 4 months after the fact, but also 2 days before we were leaving for Chicago, so it was a bit of an intense moment. I will go grab it because I've never actually shown it in a video. But here it is. It is super cool. I'm not actually sure if I've ever shown this at all in a video. It is kind of sitting over there in front of me, but I don't normally film that way. But yes, it is this golden droid statue that says my name and what I won for. So visual arts, custom costume, my name, and then Emphas costume. Because that was the title of my submission, you know, very obviously named. But yeah, super, super cool. There were other things. There was like a nice little Star Wars show like gift packet, but this was obviously the main award. The other stuff is kind of all over the place. But yeah, you got Chopper on top, which love Chopper. So yeah, this is super cool. This is definitely like the coolest thing that I've ever received one. It's unbelievable. Like, I never in a million years thought I would win, and thank you guys if you were around at that, around the time of the Star Wars Fan Awards. You'll know that there was this fan voting, and I know a whole lot of you were voting for me, so thank you for that. Like, we did it. This is crazy. I will never forget this, and just thank you. Yes, and then immediately after that, the costume was finished, and there were all of the pictures for that, because I needed to take pictures to basically promote that I was wearing this costume at Star Wars Celebration, and if anyone was trying to find me, this is what I was going to be in. So, had to take some like fancy promo shots of all of that. Picture of my Emphas Nest helmet versus my Emphas Ren helmet. And then a picture of my finished vest. I'm not actually sure if I have any better pictures of than these kind of convoluted selfie style ones. And then of course you have all of my Chicago and Star Wars Celebration pictures, which I'm just gonna skip through because it's not art related. Although I will share this one. This was in Blick. Because you knew, like, I haven't been to the States in years, and so I'd never been to a Blick, and you know, as a Canadian, all you hear about is these Americans going on about how Blick is amazing, and I knew that at some point we were going to need to find a Blick store, and we found one in Chicago, and it was massive. I'm sure there are bigger ones, but it was a lovely time. More Chicago pictures, and then you have the Star Wars Celebration pictures themselves. Here's possibly a better look at the vest and when I was actually fully in the low-key Sabine look. Episode 9 panel, here's my shot with the Star Wars Rebels crew. It was just a crazy, non-stop busy time. And then it was actually the Emphas Ren day. And it was kind of dictated because I had my photo op with Erin Kellyman and met her, and actually got her to sign my helmet blade because, again, I knew I couldn't take my Enfys Nest costume, but the blade was flat and easily packed, so I did get that, take that, and I got her to sign it, which was kind of one of those, like, I wouldn't say bucket list things, but it was something, like, I'm sure if you make costumes or whatever, you kind of always have it in the back of your mind, like, if this opportunity ever happened, this is what I would love to do, and that was the thing for me, that if I ever got the opportunity to meet Erin Kellyman, I would have loved to have her sign a helmet blade, and miraculously, I got to do it. And I did have a bit of a break after Chicago because I did get very sick when I was there and also rebounded once I was home. So the next thing I obviously was working on was my Killing Eve illustration, which again, super fun. Love Killing Eve. I have lots of other artwork plans in mind for that show. I have different concepts that I haven't had a chance to do yet, so hopefully they will get done this year. Yeah, and then this is when I had designed the limited edition Enfys Ren pins, because there were a lot of people that ended up seeing these pins that I made and didn't get to go to Star Wars Celebration, and so this was kind of my answer. Make these limited edition ones that have this hand-drawn card backing, like make them fancier, and that was just kind of the happy medium. So anyone that wanted one had the opportunity to own one if they wanted. And this was apparently the time that I started considering building an Embo costume, because this is when the reference photos started to pop up. Then I did the tutorial that was just kind of going over my approach to photorealism and how you can actually achieve photorealism with something as simple as an HB pencil. This is when we went fabric shopping for Embo, so definitely around this time was when I was seriously considering this as a costume because we were shopping for the materials for it. A random Castlevania sketch. I think I was trying to do some sort of sketch challenge around here that didn't work out for one reason or another. Yes. And we have the finger-painted galaxy because I somehow messed up my hand or wrist or something around then and I literally could not hold on to a pencil. So the answer to that was let's make the best of it and do a challenge video doing finger painting of some sort, which the only one I actually ever got around to doing was the galaxy itself. This is when I started working on the Orphan Black plaque. I got sick so much this year, but I completely binge watched Orphan Black, so by the time I was finally feeling better, naturally I wanted to do some Orphan Black fan art. So that's what I did, and I decided to do this design on a wood plaque. Now, I unfortunately don't have any process pictures, but I did actually manage to finally complete this Enfys Nest custom Funko. I had had the pieces for over a year at this point, and I never actually got around to making it. So very happy that this finally was accomplished. It was a very easy custom. Basically, you just took off one head of one, put it on the other body. I did a bit of a paint job, and that was it. Because I was on the custom Funko bend, I also made a custom Delphine Funko from Orphan Black. And then this is when I started getting the Embo stuff together. So this, I don't think this was together at all. This was just, I had all the mask pieces printed, and so that's what the picture's of. Now this I am going to show you. I started working on these, I have tweeted about this, so might as well show you. I started working on these two Orphan Black Art Nouveau style pieces, and they are still not finished, extremely annoyingly. Every time I go to start doing them again, or finish them basically, they are I'd say more than 50% done. The line art got finished on them and I started painting them, and for some reason I just did not finish them, which is very rare for me. I very rarely start a piece and don't actually finish it, especially if I'm very happy with how it's turning out. But for whatever reason, did not get done. Hopefully that will be something that is finished this year because, again, I have thought about actively finishing these because they were going to become t-shirt designs, and it just did not happen. For some reason, this piece got finished though, this Pride-ish piece. Really happy with how this turned out. Nice and colorful, love the splashy effect. And then this is when I started working on that sketch challenge. So the 24 hours and see how much I could fill up in a sketchbook. Here's a sketch for the Kofin piece that I did, and this is also something that I had sketched it out and didn't actually finish until like a month or two later, which again, pretty rare, but nice to know I was sticking with the theme. And here's when I actually started actively working on Embo. So you have pictures of the mask, actually put together test pictures of the lenses in the eye, and then when I started actually sculpting it. Lots of reference pictures. This is when I was working on the back part of the head, the actual hat template pieces. It was actually Captain America's shield. I was planning on actually using the shield, but it was too heavy and not big enough. Then just a lot of work on the hat. It is a massive piece. I have, if you're interested, I have a whole video that is talking way more in depth for the costume and how everything was completed. More costume stuff, templates that I printed out, test fitting of different things, like the bases of different things. Just lots of costume stuff at this point. Unfinished armor pieces. This is when I was doing the lines in the giant collar armor, like engraving them. The front and back armor pieces. This is when I started working on the giant bowcaster and kind of the innards of that. And I started actually painting the head part, which was actually a live stream that I decided to do. The shoes that were all custom wrapped and painted, starting to paint the helmet. This is still seriously one of my all-time favorite behind the scenes pictures of anything. It's when I had done the weathering on one side of the hat and not the other, and it's literally just two paint colors on the base colors, and it just completely transformed the hat. And I think it's a very good representation of the importance of weathering and understanding, like, just understanding how easy it is to achieve a very in-depth paint job that really does not take that much. The mask that's getting more finished and the back pieces. The bowcaster finally finished here, and just the ginormity of it. Painting the hands, I had to do that when they were on me. Painting the sleeves, also had to do that when it was on me. And then of course the actual final photographs of the costume. And this is when I finished up painting that Kofin illustration. And then around this time, for some reason, I guess I didn't bother with pictures because it was definitely more of a video type thing. I did the 3D printed art supplies video, which was a ton of fun, and hopefully I get to do part 2 for that this year. And here's some behind the scenes pictures of the crayon video. I decided to spend a week only using crayons for artwork. Did I put this in a video? I'm not actually sure if this was part. I think this was another bit. Like, there was a point where I was filming videos and I just didn't finish them, or I wasn't super happy with the idea and I thought of something better, so I just kind of abandoned it. But there's this succulent drawing from a video that I was working on trying out square sketchbooks. This I know was part of a video. This was when I was testing out a new watercolor journal. And then you have the marble tutorial that I decided to kind of do on a whim. I don't even remember why I was trying to paint marble, but it just kind of became a thing that I absolutely had to try and figure out and nail of how to create this technique to easily mimic a marble effect in watercolor. Yep, the start of more printing things. This I'm pretty sure is the Mandalorian helmet because I knew I was going to do a video on it, so I was kind of preemptively preparing and gradually printing all of the pieces so I wasn't like mad dash rush at the end, because, you know, there's nothing rushed about the process of 3D printing. That entire file took me like 90 hours to print, so you want to be prepared when it comes to 3D print stuff. Some thumbnail options for my favorite inks that I did because Inktober was coming up. Ah yes, behind the scenes things. This was a studio vlog type video that it's not that I wasn't ever going to post it, it's that something happened and I never got a chance to edit it, but I did do this video as a behind the scenes process of how I customize Funko Pops. So if you would like to see that video and don't mind that it's a Castlevania character, you know, a vampire, let me know because I will like up that on the editing list. Now, this is when I started working on my little custom travel palette that I made for myself initially because I was going away to Alberta for a few days and I thought it might be cool to try and film. It didn't happen, but the plan was that I wanted to take this small sort of art kit so that I could possibly film there in the nice scenic mountains and paint, which did not happen, as I mentioned, but it was a good idea because it turned into a very cool little side business, these travel palettes, because when I posted this video showing this travel palette, everyone wanted one. And, you know, if you were around at the end of the year, you know, I sold out of them multiple times, and yes, there are more coming. I will be working on those hopefully very soon, that there will be a restock of more travel palettes. And then it was Inktober, so I have some pictures of, I didn't do full Inktober, I did a week of it. I thought that was a reasonable expectation for me, just because I was busy doing other things, so a week seemed like a good amount. And then of course there's all of the photos from Alberta. I kind of decided to turn into a photographer for that weekend, which was a nice change because I don't normally get to focus so much on photography. It's kind of an unintentional offshoot of, you know, just taking nice pictures of artwork and being able to display that in a certain sense, but I'm not necessarily going out as a photographer and going out of my way to take nice photos of things, so it was a nice change of pace for once. That and my dad and I were having like a photo off of who could get the best pictures from the trip. And let me tell you, it was not difficult to get amazing photos for where we were. So the next thing that I jumped back into was this Halloween-inspired artwork. The idea of the video was I was going through my entire creative process from like initial concept to finish piece. And this is where started the Mandalorian helmet process build. So I was starting, I had the pieces all printed, but the process of finishing said pieces and actually building the helmet was a week sprint. Like, I think I was up to like 4 a.m. the night before the video came up, voicing it over. That's how much of a not great planned video that was, because at some point I just kind of realized that, oh shoot, I have a week to get this finished because I wanted it up for when The Mandalorian started. I have a picture of my Mandalorian helmets all together. I thought that would be a cool photo. Now this I couldn't mention, Star Wars had this build your own droid contest, and apparently because I won one of their previous contests, my entire family decided that I absolutely had to enter this one, which I didn't win, so I can legally talk about this now because basically you weren't allowed to show any of your designs off. So my droid was named QB. This is the original concept art for that droid design, and then this was my finished submission for the contest. So yeah, that's QB3, aka QB, that was my droid. And then this is when I started making the helmet stands. That was all in a studio vlog. This I haven't shown you. This is kind of art related. My mom wanted a couple of, I put a bunch of these photos from our Alberta trip on Redbubble, and she really liked what a bunch of them looked like on certain products, and so she wanted a couple of them as pillow designs for the living room, and so these are the designs that she chose. This is when I started working on the travel tin. So this might be one of your tins watching right now. Just some behind the scenes, like when they were drawing basically pictures. Then in between that, at some point I decided to do the Baby Yoda ornament, which was kind of a last minute, like I really wanted to like get it out there fast. I pulled it off in like a day, and I think I posted it the next day or something crazy. Oh yeah, and then around this time is when my conspiracy palettes and mini controversy palette finally came in, so I was like mad dashing between doing all of these travel palettes and quickly coming up with the conspiracy palette artwork, which honestly might be one of my favorite pieces of artwork I did last year. Like, on its own, I'm really happy with how it turned out, but the fact that it's makeup, it's just a really cool piece, and I'm really happy with, like, I can't believe it turned out like that. So that was a super fun time and a nice challenge to do. More palette things. This is the picture of, because it was such a crazy week, I apparently didn't take like any pictures of working on the other ones, but these were all of the palettes that I pulled off in a week, I'm pretty sure, because people were freaking out and they wanted more, and then the mystery boxes did really well too, and just thank you guys so much. And like I said, there will be more coming, hopefully soon. Just trying to get back into the swing of things, of course, but there will definitely be more in the future, so don't worry. And then, because there was this absolutely bananas few weeks, like an early night of those few weeks was like 3 a.m. so it was crazy. So I decided to, as like a kind of a treat to myself, I guess you could say, build a Baby Yoda. So Baby Yoda, obviously, it took a while to print, so it did not happen overnight. So in that time, I was working on a few other things, namely the helmet ornament tutorial. Baby Yoda was a nice little change of pace and a nice little treat for me to be able to work on. I won't say leisurely, because I did kind of a blow through building him as well, because I wanted him done for a video, which wasn't even planned. The internet spoke and said, how dare you consider not making a video building him. And here is the little green bean himself, but he was the final piece of artwork in 2019, which I think is very fitting. And that is what my year looked like artwork-wise. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. I know it was a long one. Hopefully we can have an even better time on here in 2020. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.